If Baker Mayfield gets traded to the Carolina Panthers, how should we feel about this entire Panthers offense? And I guess Baker Mayfield himself. Jeff, go ahead and start us off here.
If the Panthers were able to insulate Baker behind a strong offensive line and give him a strong run game and maybe give him some veteran experienced wide receivers, maybe a guy like Jarvis Landry, Odell Beckham, maybe we could be a little bit hopeful about Baker Mayfield. I think we saw him in an opportunity that he's not going to get a better structure really than what he had in Cleveland. They had an offensive line that was built there. They had a running game that he could rely on. They had experienced wide receivers, and that didn't end well. And so I think that it's going to be a guy that if you're looking at in terms of fantasy, he's a super flex play only. He's a caretaker quarterback, and I don't know that the upside's going to be there. You like him a little bit more because there's hope that he might be able to get that offense moving just more than Sam Darnold, God forbid, or Matt Corral. And that's really, as I'm looking at the Panthers, I want to see what Matt Corral has. And because the Panthers need to recognize where they are as an organization, give him a shot, see what he's got, and then position themselves that if they need to dip back into the draft. I think that's really the way they need to go.
Yeah, and you talked about it. We get so like in our fantasy bubble that everyone sees, oh my goodness, DJ Moore and Christian McCaffrey and Robbie Anderson and Tommy Tremble and all these great players. But the structure that he had in Cleveland with that offensive line and with that run game helped him out so much more than a handful of fantasy assets would. So, Troy, I want to get your take on this. I mean, is it a neutral move for Baker Mayfield? If he goes to Carolina, would you move him up in your rankings? Would you move him down in your rankings? Or does he stay about the same for you?
He stays about the same for me. I mean, Jeff made some very great points, right? I feel like he had the perfect situation for Baker Mayfield. Everything, again, you didn't have to rely on him to be the guy. He had so many other things going on with the offensive line, the run game. Again, Cleveland made Baker's life very easy, right? Last year, obviously, he had the shoulder issues, but let's look at what it is now. I mean, again, he's just a super flex play. We just need him to get the ball to Christian McCaffrey and DJ Moore. He's fine. I feel like he's kind of the same. Like if he goes to Carolina, I feel like most people who make a move either significantly upgrade or significantly downgrade. Baker Mayfield is going to stay the same, maybe slight downgrade, but it's hard because he has such good assets. So I feel like that's what's keeping him afloat in terms of just neutral land. So yeah, I think he's just fine. I'm not extremely super excited about Baker Mayfield. I don't think the Panthers should honestly trade for him because Cleveland should probably it's probably going to have to end up cutting him because Seattle and Carolina don't necessarily need to trade for him. And Jimmy G is also a scenario where he could possibly get cut too. So I don't know if he should trade for any of them. Wait for wherever one gets cut and sign that guy. So that's my opinion. But yeah, I feel like he's very in neutral land right now.
So let's riff off of that a little bit. Jeff, I know that you're stepping in today as kind of a guest co-host here, but you've watched the show before and we love to go off on tangents. So because Troy said Jimmy Garoppolo, let's go off on a little bit of a tangent here. Obviously the Carolina Panthers, we thought that they addressed their quarterback situation last year when they went all in with Sam Darnold. That didn't work out. This year they drafted Matt Corral, but with them actively looking for a quarterback on the trade market, it doesn't seem like they have a lot of faith in either Darnold or Corral to be the guy this year. So let's say Jimmy Garoppolo somehow ends up in Carolina. Do you think that is a better or worse situation than they'd be in with Baker under center?
Similar. I think it's better situation because I trust Jimmy Garoppolo, I guess, as a person a little bit more than I do Baker Mayfield. No knocks on what I don't know about Baker Mayfield, but I think that there are plenty of rumblings coming out of that Cleveland organization that something was foul in that locker room, and a lot got put on Odell Beckham when he was released. But it kind of sounds like the story, I don't know. There's rumors that Odell Beckham might go back to the Browns now, or is talking about going back to the Browns, and that makes me wonder if Baker was really the problem in that locker room. We have seen Baker. We know he's a little bit of a loose cannon, but we've seen him on the interview tour afterwards. And I think the Panthers, they are a desperate organization. And that's really why they're looking at one of these guys, because Matt Rule knows that if they don't make the playoffs, he's gone. He's got Ben McAdoo was the best he could find as an offensive coordinator. So that doesn't put him in a good position. I would do Jimmy Garoppolo simply because I think he's an adult that you can have in the room. And I think that there's value in that. Whereas Baker, I could just see that really going off the rails. And it might be headed off the rails anyways.
Yeah, and I always try so hard to take that with a grain of salt when we get like these feelings about how players are, and you hear about Kyler's immaturity, and you hear about Baker's immaturity, and is there really substance to that, or is that just kind of the team trying their best to lower a player's value so they can lock him in a long term deal? So, I understand. We've heard a lot of stories about Baker Mayfield that put him in not a great light, but he seems like a pretty cool guy to have a beer with. I mean, I'm sure the team seems to love him. It seems like most of his teammates like him for the most part. But anyway, let's go ahead and get into the show. Since Victoria couldn't make it today, we decided to bring in our good friend Jeff Bell, who is not only a Buffalo Bills fan, but also a CPA. So you might not even notice a difference on the show today. Jeff is going to kill it. Jeff, for the audience that doesn't know you, let them know where they can find you on Twitter, what you're working on, and all those fun things.
Yeah, on Twitter, you can see it on the screen. For whom J Bell tolls on Twitter, the number 4. And you can find me with Football Guys content going up there. I've got a couple spotlights in the cannon that are ready to go and loaded up, and those will be coming soon. And then Tuesday nights, 9:30, Debbie Royale. That's where I do my other show with 2 other members of Football Guys, with Kevin Coleman and with Christian Williams there. So if Football Guys family, and it's fantastic to be here, and just thank you guys so much for extending the invitation.
Of course. And we got some friends in the chat here, Craig, saying that we need adult on this show. And we do. The kids are out to play today. Troy, we started this show together. It's been almost a year now since we launched this show. Can you believe it?
I can't believe it, man. It's been such a fun time. It's obviously I'm biased because it's my show too, but it's one of my best shows that I've ever been on, and it's fun. I love being able to answer people's questions, interact with the audience. It's just a fun time.
It's a good time, man. It started off just me and you. Then we got Victoria in there. We've had Chad Parsons on the show. We've had Chris Allen on the show. We got Jeff Bell on here today. Just a really fun opportunity for the football guys to go ahead and get together. Just want to remind everybody, though, if you have not seen this show before, go ahead and start dropping those questions in the chat. We'll get to those at the end of the show, but we're going to start off with some submitted questions. You can submit those questions yourself by either sending them directly to us on Twitter, or you can send them to mailbag@footballguys.com. We're going to come at you every Wednesday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, so tune in live to get those questions in. Right now, we're obviously speculating a lot this time of year with it being very early in camps, but in season, we'll help you with all your sit starts and all of that fun stuff. This season, we are sponsored by Underdog Fantasy. So, Troy, you want to go ahead and let the audience know a little bit about our sponsor here over at Underdog?
Absolutely. So everyone, be sure to sign up for Underdog Fantasy today. If you haven't already, this year they've upped the prize pool in their Best Ball Mania contest to $10 million. In addition to their best ball tournaments, they've got sit and go best ball drafts with entry costs as low as $3. We all know the best part of fantasy football is drafting. At Underdog, all you have to do is best ball scoring formats. You just draft your team and that's it. Underdog will score your ultimate lineups each week of the season. In addition to the best ball fantasy leagues, you can play Underdog's pick'em games for NFL, NBA, MLB, NHL, PGA, and more. Select over-unders or rivals for tonight's matchups, and you can win up to 20 times your money in a single night. Some regional restrictions may apply. Sign up for Underdog today with promo code FOOTBALLGUYS and get a 100% deposit matchup up to $100.
Yeah, I cannot talk good enough about Underdog. As you can see, I'm sitting here in a sling right now. I had surgery about 3 weeks ago. I've done over 100 best ball drafts in the last 3 weeks. I mean, it is the only thing getting me through my recovery. So go ahead and sign up. Promo code FOOTBALLGUYS will get you a 100% deposit match on your initial deposit up to $100. But let's go ahead and dive right in with a question from our good friend Bo here. And Bo is saying, are you concerned that Jerry Jeudy's return last season completely eliminated the viability of Courtland Sutton as a fantasy wide receiver? What justification do you have to take Courtland Sutton over Jerry Jeudy? If you look at his splits last year, as soon as Jerry Jeudy came back into the lineup, Courtland Sutton disappeared. Troy, start us off here. Right now, Courtland Sutton is getting drafted almost a full round ahead of Jerry Jeudy. How do you justify that?
To be honest, there isn't much justification except for if you believe Sutton is a better talent than Jerry Jeudy. Also, we've been hearing a lot of camp rumors about Sutton's connection with Russell Wilson. So we don't have much to go on, right? Those are the only things that we really have to go on, to be honest, because we don't know what the offense looks like with Russell Wilson. So he's going to find his go-to guy. Look, I'm having full confidence in Russell Wilson. He's going to be able to support Jeudy and Sutton. It's just about who's the wide receiver one. if I had to guess, I believe it's Sutton, but it could easily be Judy. But as with the information we have now and what we got going out of camp, I'm going to take Sutton ahead of Judy for the time being.
I'm completely with you, and I want to get Jeff's take on this, and then we'll talk a little bit about some reports that have come out from Cecil Lammey straight from Broncos camp. But Jeff, how do you justify taking Sutton over Judy if you do at all?
So my basis for justification is really common sense, because I look at it and I say, last year, 2 years ago, Jerry Jeudy was one of the worst players in the NFL. He had a 46% catch rate. It was terrible. Last year, he really only saw volume because Teddy Bridgewater was the quarterback. And the book is really out on Teddy Bridgewater. He's going to work underneath. He's not going to stretch the field vertically. And those are really the areas that Courtland Sutton is going to survive and thrive in. And so I expect Denver, what you're going to see is reliance on that run game with Javonte Williams potentially breaking out as being the lead back there. Melvin Gordon working in rotation there, loading up and then taking deep shots to Courtland Sutton and to Tim Patrick. And, I think that you look at a lot of the things around the team. I don't know that you can really trust Jerry Jeudy. He had the story come out blocking his relation. The formula baby in the car, what's going on there? And I think that there's some current concerns with his ability to stay healthy after last year. It's just a whole bunch of black marks against him. And then I don't know, it's common sense that leads. And that's even before you're getting into the camp drum beats.
Yeah. And really, when you look at this, the way the question is phrased by Bo here, I think it's very intentional. It makes it sound like Jerry Jeudy came in and just completely kneecapped Courtland Sutton, when the fact of the matter is Jerry Jeudy wasn't good either. I mean, it's not like he stepped in and became some world beater and Courtland Sutton fell off the map. I mean, they both were garnering targets, but neither of them were startable in fantasy. This team leaned heavily on Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon to facilitate their offense. And I just want to point out something that our friend Addison Hayes tweeted out today in a quick video. Courtland Sutton has now been with the Denver Broncos for a few years, and during that time, the team has never passed for more than 20 touchdowns. The entire team in a single season hasn't passed for more than 20 touchdowns. Russell Wilson has never passed for fewer than 20 touchdowns in a season. So we are looking at an epic upgrade here. I think there's going to be more than enough to go around. But like we said with the camp implications, our friend Cecil Lammey is down at Mile High Stadium, watching this team work out all the time. And he has been beating the drum for Courtland Sutton that he and Russell Wilson have a connection. And when you think about the type of ball that Russell Wilson likes to throw, he loves throwing that moon ball down the sideline. And that is where Courtland Sutton thrives. So many people have made the comp to Jerry Jeudy being the Tyler Lockett and Courtland Sutton being the DK Metcalf. And while I think there is some truth to that, the one guy that nobody's talking about is Tim Patrick, who has a very realistic shot at stepping up as the team's wide receiver too. I see both of you guys nodding here. Does anybody want to talk a little bit about Tim Patrick before we move on to the next question?
I'll jump in. I'm just like, he is such a value, guys. And it's just like, he's going so late that it does not hurt at all to take a shot on him. Again, he's either going to be Tim Patrick, which he's actually been, again, maybe in best ball drafts, but we've seen him be a good receiver with Drew Lock. Like we haven't seen a lot of volume, we haven't seen a lot of opportunity, but when he gets the opportunities in years past, we've seen Tim Patrick look like a very, very capable wide receiver. And again, we've heard a little bit of camp news too, which also helps. So again, he's going so cheap that it doesn't hurt to take a shot on him. So yeah, I'm trying to grab Tim Patrick late in drafts all day, every day.
And I don't understand why he's going so late. I mean, chasing the money is a dangerous game, but the Denver Broncos gave Tim Patrick a 3-year, $34 million contract last year. That is not wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 money. They are expecting him to be a big part of this offense. So, it's kind of crazy that we're looking at it this way. But as we get more and more reports out of camp, it's possible that Jerry Jeudy might end up being the wide receiver 3 in this situation. Something to pay close attention to. Obviously, everybody is gung-ho and fired up about this team, but there are a lot of question marks as to how the pecking order in the receiving room is going to work itself out. Let's go into this next question here from C. Henry, and he says, how far are you willing to go zero running back in redraft? Haven't really done a lot of... Well, yeah, we'll throw this one to Jeff. Jeff likes his zero running back strategy. So, Jeff, how deep are you going? When you say zero running back, are you taking a running back in the 5th round, or are you waiting until the 15th? Let's hear it.
So my absolute floor on zero running back is Damian Harris. So Damian Harris is sitting with a 95 overall underdog ADP. He had 14.0 points per game last year, and that's really right in line with where like a guy like Dalvin Cook finished. It's more than where Saquon Barkley finished. And you know that, I don't know, there's a lot of people that are deciding that there's some sort of controversy or timeshare between him and Ramondre Stevenson, but I don't buy it at all. I think Damian Harris is the lead back on a team that you know wants to run the football. I know he doesn't catch passes, and I know that that's a black mark on a PPR league, that you can't have a running back that can't catch passes. But again, this is a guy that you can kind of get in that 7th, 8th, 9th round. And so that would be my absolute floor. If I'm going 0 RB and I'm just loading all the way through, I cannot miss on Damian Harris, and I would aggressively take him above that 95 overall ADP. I know the running back dead zone is a thing, but I think that there's so much value there this year that he's talking about if you were to start multiple wide receivers going through there, and we're supposed to take wide receivers in that dead zone, but you've got guys like Ezekiel Elliott, Travis Etienne, Cam Akers, and Breece Hall all sitting there, and those are all young, up-and-coming running backs. And so I think it's very difficult if I start with multiple wide receivers or to grab a tight end to get through that zone without taking a running back, because there's so much potential value there. But again, Damian Harris would be my absolute floor on 0 RB.
Yeah, and like you said, that's going about the 8th, 9th round. But there are some other pretty intriguing names. Let's say somebody really reaches for Damian Harris and throws a wrench in your plan. Cordero Patterson is getting drafted there. And I mean, we saw him really fall off at the end of the season. Now Tyler Algier is there, which can muddy things up a little bit. But he's somebody that's got a pretty high ceiling, and we saw it last year. Kareem Hunt is another guy right now getting drafted as RB32. This guy was putting up RB1 numbers last year before getting hurt, especially in a league where you're getting half a point just for a reception. Kareem Hunt is a guy that I'd be looking at there as well. And then you get a little bit further down the list. Devin Singletary and James Cook are getting drafted back to back with almost identical ADPs. Nobody knows exactly how that running back room is going to shake out, but there is a very good chance that one of those guys ends up hitting. And you know what? Let's just go ahead and pivot to the chat a little bit earlier than we normally do, because somebody asked here, who gets more carries, Cook or Singletary? Jeff, I know you're the Bills fan, but I'm going to let Troy take this one first. Troy, who do you think gets more carries this season, James Cook or Devin Singletary? You're muted, Troy.
My bad. I think Singletary gets more carries, Cook gets more targets.
That's simple.
Yep, that's simple.
And I see Jeff. Are you in agreement on that one as well, Jeff?
I am, yeah. Devin Singletary played pretty good football at the end of last year, and he was an RB1 through the end of last year, I believe. And so I think he's definitely going to get more carries, but yes, more targets to Cook. But Cook's got enough versatility in his game that you could see both of these guys on the field at the same time.
Yeah, and I want to shout out Chris Allen over at Footballguys, who just dropped an awesome video on Devin Singletary. I felt like I had one foot out the door, and then I watched this video from Chris, and now I cannot stop drafting him in the 10th round. Troy, same question to you, though. How far are you willing to go in 0 running back? Or is that just a strategy that you're not even trying to implement?
0 running back is not my personal strategy when it comes to redraft leagues. I prefer that strategy in Dynasty more so. But in redraft, I like to go RB heavy because, look, the standard format is usually, you got your 2 running backs, maybe 2 to 3 wide receivers. It depends. But I feel like in redraft, I like to focus. But another running back that's in that same range, it's gross, but I want to mention him, Miles Sanders. Okay. So last year, everyone makes fun of him because he didn't score a touchdown, but he got opportunities, right? And I believe it's the entire offense for the Eagles should look better. So I believe that that's another guy that's in that gross area that you could get there. If you're going 0 RB, Miles Sanders is somebody that I would try to look at as well.
Agreed. Yeah, he's a guy that I really like when I'm going after that strategy this year. And then you talked about how most leagues, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers. So now we're going to have to do some quick calculus in our head and figure out this next question here, because Fantasy Yak is saying if you're in a league where you can start 4 receivers in your lineup and you have full PPR and you're drafting from the 102, would you consider going the 0 running back route from the 102? Troy, this is a little bit different than what we just talked about, because you can start 4 receivers here. So what are you doing in this type of league?
To be honest, even it's not crazy to go wide receiver in this draft. Like, even though would I personally do it? Probably not. But if you want to take JJ Chase or Cooper Kupp and redraft at 102, some people might look at you sideways. But let's be honest, like, it's not that crazy, especially in this format. Like, I think that makes complete sense.
So let's hear it. Just go ahead, walk us through. Can you rank those 3 out for us in full PPR? Who are you taking first between JJ Kupp and Chase? Let's hear it.
I feel there's no right answer, but me personally, I'm probably gonna go Cooper Kupp, Chase, JJ.
All right. I disagree, but hey, you know, the margins on those guys are
Like,
razor
that's what I'm
thin.
saying. I feel like whatever order you want to put them in, I'm completely fine. But I'm just talking about the volume. And after the season that Cooper Cup had last year, going into this year, I know they have Allen Robinson, but it shouldn't be that drastically different. That may not going to be historic, but he's going to get the volume. Not the other guys aren't, but that's why I'm gonna take him first.
I like it. Jeff, let's hear from you a little bit. At the 102, are you taking a wide receiver here? Or maybe with full PPR, do you lock in Christian McCaffrey, who's got the elite pass catching upside? What are you doing here?
You know, I saw this question on Twitter the other day, and it was asked by somebody else, but in the same kind of frame and mindset. It really kind of depends on. Personally, I guess it depends what I'm trying to diversify, because I could put Christian McCaffrey there, I could put Austin Eckler there, or I could put one of these wide receivers there. In a start for wide receiver there, though, I would probably defer to taking wide receiver just because I want to take as many out of that pool as possibly can. And the other thing that I'm thinking too is if I see 4 wide receivers that can be started, I want to take one off the board early so I've got a wide receiver 1 locked in, but I want other people to see me taking wide receiver early too, because there's a lot of that mindset that if you were to see Cooper Kupp go second, then all of a sudden maybe at third you're saying, well, I need to get Jefferson, and then you're saying, well, Chase is the only guy left, and then all of a sudden you're taking Stephon Diggs up a little bit earlier, and I think that there's something to be said for that mindset. If I would go to 0 RB or not, that really depends on how it plays out, how that 2-3 turn is looking. You know, if running back or if wide receiver falls a little bit and you're looking at a guy like Deebo Samuel in that range, or a guy like Tyreek Hill in that range, or a guy like Mike Evans, then I might go a little bit more comfortable going that 0 RB route. If you are able to start a cascade of wide receivers, and then you'll see the value kind of shift around there too, maybe a tight end or maybe a running back. And so that's really kind of where it depends on where it gets played out. But when I'm looking at the 102 this year, it feels like more than ever, it's really dealer's choice. And you need to make your selection because you're not going to get another chance at Christian McCaffrey or Austin Eckler or one of these wide receivers. And so whatever direction you go, I don't think that there can be a consensus this year because there's so many openings and opportunities. And maybe you're somebody that believes that Christian McCaffrey still possesses that ceiling and that Dante Foreman isn't going to kind of take some of that market share. I kind of expect that and see a little bit of red zone usage out of him. And I think that lowers that ceiling a little bit. But if you don't believe that, then that might be your way to go on the 102. But again, I think there's market factors at play. There's diversity at play on your roster, how you want to attack this, how many teams you draft. But in 4 start wide receiver, I would probably defer to Cooper Kupp would be my selection.
Yeah. And this year is certainly weird. I mean, it seems like there's usually some sort of a consensus how the first round is going to shake out. Like I said, I've been doing a lot of drafts lately, and I have seen them all over the place. You know, that top 7, you can basically just throw in a cup and shake up. I mean, I've seen Austin Eckler go as early as 102. I've seen Derrick Henry at that 102 spot. I've seen people passing on JT to take Cooper Kupp number 1 overall. I've seen Chase go number 1 overall. I mean, those top 7 picks, there is going to be no consensus. So there isn't a right or wrong answer. Just pick the guy you like realistically. You know, we've all talked about it a little bit. Me personally, I'm going with Justin Jefferson at the 102, and I think I'm the only person here that's going that route. But I'm talking about a young guy who doesn't have a lot of target competition. I'm expecting Adam Thielen. You know, he's approaching that age cliff. I don't think that he's going to be a huge target hog over there anymore. So Justin Jefferson is my wide receiver 1, and that's who I'm taking at the 102 in full PPR. But really, you could make a strong case for Eckler, Henry, or any of these receivers that we have discussed so far. Now, this is a really fun question coming up, and I feel like we could spend the entire hour just talking about this alone. Matt Gruber asks us, will Jalen Hurts be able to support 2 top 24 wide receivers and a top 12 tight end? Who is the potential man out? Jeff, start us off here. How are we feeling about Jalen Hurts in this Eagles offense?
Well, Donta Smith is not valued as a top 24 wide receiver right now. So, you know, ADP doesn't necessitate that he has to support 2 top 24 wide receivers and a top 12 tight end. I would defer to say that he would be the odd guy out because he kind of already is. But at the same time, I just look at top 12 tight end. The floor on that is so low that if you were to get Dallas Goedert, really only needs to catch a couple touchdowns, and he's already a top 12 tight end. But he was much more hit or miss last year. He had half of his games, 7 of his games, he was under 5 PPR points. And so that kind of opens up that I don't know, there's a little bit more volatility there with Dallas Goedert than maybe I think people realize. But if you're looking at this as the odd man out, it would have to be Smith. But again, he's sitting at, I think, is
34,
ADP
wide
on
receiver
Underdog.
34 right now.
Wide receiver 34. And so he's not being valued as a top 24. So Jalen Hurts doesn't have to support that.
Yeah, I agree with you. And this question could have been phrased a little bit differently, but I think it's still interesting to talk about because all three of these guys are likely to, one of them is likely to come up short of their ADP. So, Troy, who do you think is kind of the odd man out here?
I agree. If anyone's going to be the odd man out, it's going to be Devonta Smith because we joked on the show before. It doesn't take much to be a top 12 tight end. So I believe Goddard's going to do that. AJ Brown, we know that he's going to come in. He's going to be the wide receiver one. You don't bring him in and pay him all that money for him to be second fiddle. So he's obviously definitely going to be top 24. I believe it is possible for Devonta Smith to be top 24, but it's going to have to be off efficiency, right? Because it's going to have to be like, the coverage is all on AJ Brown and Devonta is scoring a bunch of touchdowns, and that's how he's able to, get into the top 24. But I would say like the only way it's going to happen is you're going to have to be extremely efficient, which I don't know if we could rely on it from what we saw last year with Jalen Hurts. So he's going to have to significantly upgrade as a quarterback, which could he do that? Possibly. It's asking a lot, but I would say, is it probable? Probably not. But I say, is it possible? Anything's possible. So
yeah, I think Dallas Goedert, agree with both of you. I think he finishes as a top 12 tight end, but like, what's tight end 12 to tight end 20? It really isn't that much of a difference. So I think earlier, before the AJ Brown trade, a lot of people were putting Dallas Goedert in that top 3, top 5 range, thinking that he could crack in as an elite tight end. And I think dreams of that are just gone at this point. But we talked about Devonta Smith's ADP at wide receiver 34. And that is just, I hate using the term disrespectful, but that is so disrespectful. I mean, we have been so clouded by Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson's rookie seasons that we aren't looking at what Devonta Smith did as impressive. 900 yards as a rookie is wildly impressive. He put up almost identical numbers to Jalen Waddle. Jalen Waddle's out here getting drafted as a top 10 dynasty asset. Well, Devonta Smith is slipping into the 7th, 8th, 9th rounds of dynasty startups. He's slipping into wide receiver 34 range. Devonta Smith, in my opinion, is one of the best wide receiver values out there right now. I think that AJ Brown is going to maintain his efficiency on a relatively low volume, just like he did in Tennessee. But I think that Devonta Smith is still going to feast, and it wouldn't surprise me one bit to see him crack 1,000 yards this year. And this team last year ran the heck out of the ball, but they just spent $100 million on AJ Brown. They are going to change up their offensive philosophy a little bit when you've got a player like that. So everybody got scared off by AJ Brown and Devonta Smith, thinking that these guys were both going to come short of their ADP, but I think they've been pushed down to the point where it's an overcorrection, and both guys are a great value at this point. Let's go on to the next question here from our friend Bobby, and he says, with the Chicago Bears in the midst of a salary cap clean up and build, can Justin Fields be considered a starter in a 12-team non-super flex league this season? Should I just take this one being the Bears fan, or does somebody else want to talk about Justin Fields?
It's your time, and I'll see if I want to add anything.
Listen, I love me some Justin Fields. I think that he is another player who has a very warped perspective right now, or I should say the fantasy community has a warped perspective of Justin Fields. He was rushed out a little bit earlier than expected. I mean, this is a guy who everybody said would benefit from sitting on the bench for a while. And in the second quarter of a week 2 game, Andy Dalton tweaked his ankle. Justin Fields got pushed onto the field, and wouldn't you know it, he wasn't ready to play. But as the season progressed, he got better and better and better. In his final 4 games, where he played 65% of the snaps or more, he finishes a top 12 quarterback in every single game, averaging almost 70 yards per game. That's a pace for over 1,000 yards rushing on the season. So when you're looking at that type of rushing upside, I mean, QB1 overall is within his range of outcomes. We saw Jalen Hurts break fantasy football last year just by running all over the field. We're expecting Trey Lance to do it this year, and for whatever reason, people aren't expecting this from Justin Fields. And I understand he doesn't have the supporting cast. When you're looking at Byron Pringle or Velus Jones as your wide receiver too, there isn't a whole lot to get excited about, but garbage time points still matter. This team's going to be playing from behind. They're going to be relying on Justin Fields to make plays. And well, I don't know if I'd be drafting him as a top 12 guy. He is a guy that I love pairing up if I'm getting 2 guys late in redraft. So if I'm waiting for that Aaron Rodgers, Derek Carr, Kirk Cousins, that relatively safe low-end QB1 tier, I will be more than happy to snag Justin Fields at the very end of my draft to pair up, have somebody that's going to give me a relatively safe floor for those early weeks. But if Justin Fields hits, I'd rather him hit on my bench so I can elevate him into the starting lineup than get into a bidding war for him on the waiver wire. What do you guys have to add to this?
Here you go, Jeff.
Yeah, I think you've hit the point exactly there, kind of at the close, talking about using two different quarterbacks. And when I'm looking at the Bears schedule, they start out with the 49ers and the Packers. And so those are two very difficult games coming out. But then you run into a pocket where they get the Texans, the Giants, the Vikings, and then Washington in all 4 weeks in a row. And so I would not rely on Justin Fields to be my week one starting quarterback because there's so much depth and so much talent now in fantasy football in one quarterback leagues that you can stream into. A guy like Jameis Winston has the Falcons week one. I would feel a little bit better with Jameis Winston going against the Falcons than Justin Fields going against the 49ers in week one. Now, Trey Lance is an interesting pair that if you were able to grab Trey Lance and Justin Fields, then you're really doubling down on getting that breakout rushing quarterback. And Lance starts out with the Bears and the Seahawks. And so he kind of gives you an easier ease into the season on that, and then you can start kind of shuffling them because Fields does have another pocket. They play the Patriots and the Cowboys, and I would avoid those in 7 and 8, but then they play the Dolphins, the Lions, the Falcons, and the Jets. And so you've really got two great 4-week windows there for Justin Fields that if he's arrived, if he's playing well, and you know that before you're putting him in the lineup that he's doing that. And so that's kind of where I would play it. I would play a little bit of a hot hand approach with Justin Fields, or maybe stream into a little bit and use him as just holding him as that high upside, that second quarterback. And if you want to do it as your first one and then stream in, you can potentially do that, but that you're taking a little bit more risk in there. But I do think that there's more opportunity to stream quarterback in one quarterback leagues this year than there ever has been before.
Yeah, and we see this second-year quarterback break out almost every single year. Like, we saw Patrick Mahomes do it, then we saw Lamar Jackson do it, then we saw Kyler Murray do it. Last year we saw Jalen Hurts, and now that's why people are so excited about Trey Lance. But I think all of these second-year quarterbacks, we talked about Justin Fields, we've talked about Trey Lance a little bit, but Zach Wilson, Trevor Lawrence, these are names that we think about in two quarterback and super flex leagues. But, I'm okay kind of stashing any of these guys with my last pick in redraft, holding them on my bench and just crossing my fingers in hopes that one of them hits. Because, frankly, all of these guys were pretty bad as rookies. Trey Lance showed out in a couple games, and that really padded his per start numbers. But overall, these guys struggled. They all still have sky-high potential. Most of them have been surrounded with better weapons this year. So I like all of these year two quarterbacks as late-round dart throws. Troy, what do you have to add? Again, we got off on a tangent here. If you want to talk about Fields or any of the other second-year quarterbacks.
Sure. I'll focus on Fields. So I like the idea of possibly stashing him as my last pick, but I do want to point out that usually in one QB leagues, I don't like rostering two quarterbacks, and bench size is a factor. So if I have a shallow bench, I'm most likely not going to want to hold Fields on my bench. But I do like the idea of possibly if you're gonna go with streaming quarterbacks and you want to use Fields like with your last pick, I think that makes more sense. It's just I'm looking at the ADPs, right? I want all these guys over Fields as of right now, right? So like people going in like the quarterback 12 range. So Stafford, Aaron Rodgers, Carr. The only person I would put him over right now would be Cousins, and so he'd be quarterback 15, right? Because I like Brady, Wilson, Dak. Like I just like so many people better, and he has to hit his absolute ceiling for us to really be excited, for us to be comfortable having him as our QB1. Like he has to have Jalen Hurts season. Could he do that? Possibly. As of this moment, I'm not very excited, right? And look, Velus Jones, maybe he's the secret weapon that no one knows about, right? Because you still got Darnell Mooney, and Darnell Mooney is a decent wide receiver. I think he really benefited just because of volume, and Komet is there too. But it's just, man, we got to see such a significant jump for me to feel comfortable above all these other guys that I'd much rather have. So that's my take on it.
Now I'm trying not to let my fandom, cloud my analysis here, but I mean, the way that everybody on the Bears is getting drafted right now, like people are expecting this team to score 3 points per game, and that's just not going to happen. I mean, I'm looking at these rankings: Justin Fields, QB 16, David Montgomery, RB 20, and I think that's a little bit high for David Montgomery. But Darnell Mooney, who is the wide receiver 1 on the team, wide receiver 30, Cole Kmet,
he's a
16
value
after garnering almost 100 targets last year. Khalil Herbert right now, who is probably going to be in more of a committee with David Montgomery than people want to admit. He's getting drafted right now at pick 165 as the RB51. And then Byron Jones, Byron Pringle, Velas Jones, these guys aren't even getting drafted in 18-round leagues. So I get it. The Bears are going to be bad. I'm not expecting this team to win more than 5 or 6 games this year, but they're going to do something on offense. I mean, I feel like we've gotten to the point where all of these guys, outside of maybe David Montgomery, are a value. But anyway, we got 4 questions left, and then we will hit to the chat. So let's fly through these real quickly. And this next question comes in from our friend Ahan, who says, what do you think about Marlon Mack for the 2020 season? I'm having flashbacks to 2021 Mike Davis here. I want nothing to do with Marlon Mack personally. Troy, start us off, man. Marlon Mack, or is it Damian Pierce? Rex Burkhead? I mean, what's happening in Houston?
It's just so unsexy. Like Marlon Mack is like, because you still got Rex Burkhead there. So it's Marlon Mack, Rex Burkhead, Damian Pierce, right? So it's like, let's say Marlon Mack somehow is the lead back. I fully expect some kind of weird committee thing going on. And just look, we saw Marlon Mack had like one good season with the Colts, and he looked decent, right? But it's just like, what are we expecting here? And I just feel like he's somebody that if you want to take a shot at him in a dynasty, go ahead. If you want to stash, him just as like your RB4, cool. But like redraft, you're not going to touch this guy until, again, the later rounds. Is just, he's just a running back. I'm not excited about Marlon Mack at all.
Yeah, and I think if you're targeting a running back on a team that's not going to be very good, you want a running back that's at least going to catch passes. And that's not something that Marlon Mack does. I mean, his career high is 33 targets in a single season. Saw that as a rookie, and then he saw that target number dip every single year after that. So, this is a guy who's probably going to be locked into early down work on a team that probably is going to be playing from the lead from behind quite a bit. So I don't really have a strong take on Marlon Mack, but he's not somebody that I'm going out of my way to reach. Jeff, do you have anything to add about Marlon Mack?
The way people talk about Marlon Mack, you would have think that he was a world beater when he was playing before. And I just don't understand it. It's been 2 full seasons before we saw Marlon Mack play good football. And I really think that Rex Burkhead is the guy that people are sleeping on here because he saw so much usage at the end of last year. He was pacing towards 58 targets, which would be like Michael Carter usage. And so I think that they feel very comfortable with him as the running back. With Pep Hamilton's offense kind of relies on those short passes to running back. And we know that there's great rapport with him and Davis Mills from the end of last season. And so I think that that's really, if you're looking to go in this backfield, other than Damian Pierce, who might just break out and be the rookie that runs with it, if you're kind of looking at a vet, I just don't understand why there's so much interest in Marlon Mack over Rex Burkhead, because we saw Rex Burkhead play good football a couple months ago versus 2 full seasons ago for Marlon Mack.
He's just younger. That's really the only thing. He's just younger.
Yeah, all right, I've had enough. I have completely filled my Marlon Mack talking tank for the entire week with that conversation, and I'm done. On to the next question from our friend Soda Popinski saying, Keeper League with a 4th overall pick. I'm keeping Lamb and Jefferson for a final time while losing a 6th and a 12th rounder. Very nice. And then he says, talk me out of taking Cooper Kupp with the 104. I'm not going to talk you out of it. Are either you guys talking him out of it, or are you taking Cooper Kupp at 104? Yeah, if you could start off your league with CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson, and Cooper Kupp, it's pretty tough not to win a championship there. So go ahead and do that. Love that pick. John Martin asks us here, who would you rather have in a full PPR dynasty, CeeDee Lamb or Javonte Williams? Ooh, the fact that this is even a conversation. I thought Javonte Williams was getting drafted 101 in Superflex leagues just a few weeks ago. I'm embellishing a little bit. Troy, start us off, though. CeeDee Lamb or Javonte Williams?
Give me CeeDee. Like, I like Javonte, but look, I talked about my strategy in redraft, running backs, and dynasty. Give me the CeeDee Lamb is going to be the wide receiver 1 for Dallas for a very long time. It's just when I'm looking at 2 assets in terms of, look, they're both extremely talented, they're both valuable, but look, running backs have a shorter shelf life, and Javonte Williams is not Jonathan Taylor. He's good, and that's not a knock on Javonte. It's just, if there's Jonathan Taylor, this is a different conversation, but give me CeeDee in this scenario.
Yeah, so I've got CeeDee Lamb at 6 and Javonte Williams at 10, and you can check out the ranks over at footballguys.com. The dynasty ranks are up there, and so I'm currently sitting with CeeDee above Javonte Williams. Now, that is something that could flip, though, because if we see Javonte Williams come out as the clear lead back in a explosive Denver offense, and if CeeDee Lamb, he's played well, but he's never put together that 1,500-yard season. And so he's kind of easing into it, and we're kind of still hoping for a year 3 breakout there into true fantasy superstardom. And if that doesn't arrive, then it's going to be hard pressed to not go the other direction. But right now, you have to go with CeeDee Lamb. Just the value long-term at wide receiver, being in that Dallas offense, being the clear top target in that Dallas offense, and in a full PPR league for sure, CeeDee Lamb.
Yeah, and again, I'll bring it back to Cecil Lammey, who has been, ear inside the camp over at Denver. He makes it sound like Javonte Williams is going to be the clear lead back here, and that it's not going to be a 1A, 1B situation. It is going to be the Javonte Williams show with Russell Wilson. So I'm with you guys. CeeDee Lamb is who I'm picking right here, but I wouldn't fault anybody for taking Javonte Williams because that could end up looking like a really savvy pick by about halfway through week 1 if Javonte Williams comes out as that lead guy. Last question, and then we're going to the chat here. And this one is from Chuck Bass, and he is saying, would you rather pay up for Tyreek Hill or wait on Jalen Waddle? Now, I expected these to be a little bit broader in ADP, but when you look at them, they're shockingly close. Tyreek Hill right now is getting drafted in the late 2nd round. Jalen Waddle is getting drafted in the late 3rd round. There is just about a 1-round difference between these guys. So, Troy, being the Miami Dolphins fan on the show, what are we doing here? Are you paying up for Tyreek or are you waiting on Jalen?
It's so close, but I'm just going to base it off of my experience. I've been in a lot of drafts this offseason. I've had to face this exact scenario. A lot of drafts with these two guys up here, and I've faced this scenario multiple times. I'm waiting on Jalen. I'm waiting on Jalen Waddle, and for a couple of reasons. Look, both of them are going to be fine, but we saw what Jalen did with Tua last year. They have that rapport. They've had that rapport since college. And then Jalen Waddle, he's a little bit younger, but I feel like both of them are fairly equal, right? I know they paid Tyreek Hill the money, but for me, hey, look, the money says Tyreek Hill, but I've seen him with Waddle in action. I've seen that rapport, and again, it's just a little bit later. I can get another asset where I'm getting Tyreek Hill, and I could just get Waddle a little bit later. So to me, it's just like not a huge difference. So let me just get with the later guy. So Waddle.
Now, before Jeff takes this question, I just want to point out real quickly, one of the things that makes Jeff such a great writer is the time that he spends on his articles. A lot of times when you're reading fantasy content, you can tell, yeah, this guy probably wrote this on his lunch break, or this guy wrote this 3 beers deep after watching an NBA Finals game. But Jeff here puts a lot of time into his articles, and he just wrapped up a Tyreek Hill piece. It's going to be dropping in a few days. So, Jeff, the floor is yours. I assume you're going with Tyreek Hill here. Tell us why.
Yeah, so I think Tyreek Hill is the most misunderstood player in fantasy football. And I think that there's a lot of NFL fans, the only NFL fans, that just view him as a vertical deep threat, and they're all concerned that Tua doesn't have the arm strength to get him vertical. Tyreek Hill was a running back in college. He was a legitimate all-purpose weapon in college. He lined up in the backfield in the I formation, took handoffs out of the I formation in college. He was an explosive part of the return game in college. And yeah, he transitioned to wide receiver because that fit him better, and the Chiefs used him vertically early on. And that's why everybody has this mindset that Tyreek Hill is just a deep threat. He is. He's a fantastic deep wide receiver. But you see his usage has grown. And when you're kind of transitioning him there, you want to send him deep because that's easy to do. Use your speed, run in a straight line, and you don't have to be a technician underneath. Now, recently, he has shifted to that more of that technician at the wide receiver role, stepping into Miami in a Mike McDaniel offense that we saw. Everybody is hunting for who is the next Debo. It is right in front of your eyes. It could not be easier. You have a guy that played running back at Oklahoma State at a high level, stepping into a Mike McDaniel offense that we know he's an explosive athlete. It's right here. He is the next Debo Samuel. And now, why does that matter? Debo's usage last year, it was almost like the Konami code for wide receivers, because if Tyreek Hill takes a portion of that run game, and even if he's only giving you like 2 or 3 fantasy points per game out of that run game, he really only needs to score as a wide receiver 2, as like 14, 15 points per game, and he will deliver on that ADP. Now, if he kind of gets that receiving up where we've seen him traditionally, and he's chipping in 3 points, 4 points per game out of the run game, all of a sudden you have somebody that's breaking fantasy, and you're able to get him right there at the right kind of that second, third round turn. And there's really, you have not seen the value that you can see on Tyreek Hill recently in ADP. And he is the clear alpha between him and Jalen Waddle. My concern on Jalen Waddle would be that if he's the Brandon Ayuk in the offense, then you're really overdrafting him. And I think that there's his talent. He showed that. He's got the rapport with Tua, and I don't blame you for going that direction, Troy. But I do believe that Tyreek Hill is going to step in, and it already kind of seems like, just kind of reading on Twitter, kind of seeing the interviews and things like that, Tyreek Hill has made this his team and his offense, and I think that you're going to see a lot of similarities between them relying on Tyreek Hill the way that Mike McDaniel relied on Debo.
Oh, yep. I just want to say I'm good either way. I'm good. No, those are fantastic points, Jeff. I just want to give you credit. Like, that all makes sense. And I'm like, again, it's super close for me. Like, wherever direction you want to go, since it's so close, it's not a big deal. But you made very good points.
Yeah, so eloquently spoken, Jeff. Be sure to check that article out when it drops within the next few days here. I don't have anything to add, Jeff. You knocked it out of the park, so let's go ahead and dive into the chat because we got some good questions here. This first question came while we were talking about Baker Mayfield and him possibly going to Carolina. And I just lost the question, but here it is. Can DJ Moore get 1,000 yards regardless of who is his QB? I mean, he's been doing it regardless of who his QB is, whether it's Sam Darnold. I think just about anybody is an upgrade. So, DJ Moore's hit 1,000 yards every year since his rookie season where he came up just short. So I'm not concerned about DJ Moore. He's another guy right now who is just sliding consistently in like the 4th, 5th round of drafts. And I am just gobbling up that value every opportunity I can. This guy's proven that he's quarterback proof already. I feel like he's starting to verge into that Allen Robinson, Brandon Cooks territory where he's just going to be a value every single year. So let's go on to the next question. This one comes from Matt Bingham. If McDaniels can turn Devontae into 90% of I'm losing track here. If Josh McDaniels, I thought we were talking about Mike McDaniel still. Yeah. If Josh McDaniels can turn Devontae Adams into 90% of 2007 Randy Moss and Renfro into 90% of Wes Welker, where does that leave Darren Waller in terms of targets and receptions? Well, I'm going to say Derek Carr is about 50% of Tom Brady, so I'm not expecting this at all. But let's talk about that. If we're talking about, I'll take this down so we're not blocking your face, Roy, but how does Darren Waller fit into this offense? I mean, we're expecting this to run pretty heavily through Devontae Adams, considering the draft capital and the monetary commitment that they made to him. Hunter Renfrow was great last year as a safety valve, and we saw Darren Waller, even though he was dealing with injuries, slowly start to taper off. So, Troy, start us off here. I mean, do you think that there's still room for Darren Waller in this offense?
Yes, I do believe so. And I think he's another guy. We're talking about all the guys that are slipping. Darren Waller has been slowly slipping in drafts. Like, people don't want him because of Devontae Adams trade. But to me, we talked about it doesn't take a lot to be a top tight end. And Darren Waller, we've seen he has the talent in order to do so. Is the volume going to look different? Absolutely. Like, there's no scenario where it's not going to look different when you have Devontae Adams. But to me, I think this, because previously it was really just, Waller and Renfro, but with Devontae Adams, look, and I'm assuming they're going to use him, maybe to look at him in the red zone a little bit more. And there's going to be a lot of coverage focus on Devontae. So maybe that helps open up Darren Waller, but to me, he's still going to be a top 12 tight end in terms of, he's just not going to be like I don't know if he's going to be a top 3 guy like he's been, but I still like him. I'm liking his value because, again, people are starting to be scared off of him because they're expecting Devontae just to get like 100% of the target share. So,
yeah. And he's getting drafted right now as the tight end 4. Darren Waller is ahead of George Kittle, who's getting drafted as a tight end 5. I think that's a little bit interesting. But Jeff, how do you feel about Darren Waller? Is there going to be room for him here?
You've hit on it. It's really the skeleton, the positional eligibility is really where it comes down to. And if he was a wide receiver, I would be much more concerned. But like Tyler Boyd had 11.5 PPR points last year as that clear third target. And I think that he's going to be more than Tyler Boyd. And 11.5 points still puts you right at that tight end 5, tight end 6 range. And so I think that we can all comfortably agree that he will have a higher role in usage than Tyler Boyd did in the Bengals offense. And so, I think that much of the concern on Darren Waller has been pretty overblown, and it's really just comes down to him being that tight end. And he should see better coverage than he's ever seen in his entire career.
That's another great point. Jeff quick on his feet there with the 11.5 points per game, hitting Tyler Boyd status. Got another question here from Matthew Bingham. Who starts more games this year, Mitch Trubisky or Marcus Mariota? Part 2 of the question, is either worth a roster spot in Superflex? Well, I'd say that any quarterback who has a chance of starting is at least worth a roster spot. But let's focus on the beginning of this question. Who starts more games, Mitch Trubisky or Marcus Mariota? Jeff, who are you expecting to start more? Each have a rookie breathing on the back of their neck.
Yeah, no, I would expect Marcus Mariota to start more just because draft capital is really where it comes down to me. You've got Desmond Ridder as a 3rd-round pick, whereas Kenny Pickett is stepping in there as the 1st-round pick. He's in his hometown in Pittsburgh there. And really, you look at age and development. And Kenny Pickett has been a 5-year player at Pitt. And so he's kind of more pro-ready, plus that 1st-round pick, plus the Steelers. They've shown in the past a willingness to roll the rookie out there when they took Ben Roethlisberger, and that was completely different regime. But it was... if there's one organization that I expect to kind of have the same ethos and mindset as they did 20 plus years ago, it would be the Steelers. And I think that they've shown that comfort level of running a rookie out there and just, again, using your 1st-round pick. And Pickett has every reason in the world to be comfortable. He's playing in the same exact stadium as he played in college, whereas 3rd-round pick, that kind of says something about how the Falcons viewed Ridder, that even if they loved him, they still passed on him multiple times.
Yeah, I just got to give props to Alfredo Brown here. We did our 1st-round rookie mock, what was that, a few months ago, and he mocked Kenny Pickett to Pittsburgh and was getting flamed in the chat. So if anybody in this chat tonight was there ripping on Alfredo, go send him an apology message on Twitter because he nailed that one. Troy, really quickly to you, though. Mariota or Trubisky, who do you think starts more games?
Mariota. I mean, for all the reasons Jeff said, to me, it's just he has such a great opportunity. Again, the draft capital, and I just don't believe Ritter's that dude to take it. Maybe he could develop into that dude, but I feel like right now, I just don't think he's that dude that's good enough to beat out Mariota right now.
We got another question here, and this is a fun one. Who is Christian McCaffrey's handcuff this season? Is it
I know what
Foreman?
Dave's gonna say.
Is it Chuba Hubbard? I think you'd be surprised. I don't know if it is such a clear-cut scenario. I mean, look at the difference in profiles between Chris McCaffrey and Deonta Foreman. First of all, I love Deonta Foreman, but they are not similar players. I mean, if Christian McCaffrey gets knocked out of the game, you're not plugging Deonta Foreman into the offense the same way as Christian McCaffrey. You're not asking Deonta Foreman to run wheel routes and line up in the slot and do the things that Christian McCaffrey does. So looking at a skill set, I think that Chuba Hubbard is still the handcuff for Christian McCaffrey, but I think that Deonta Foreman might have some standalone value. Christian McCaffrey does what he does so well as a pass catcher, but I think they're trying to limit his workload with these injuries over the last couple of seasons. So it wouldn't surprise me to see Deonta Foreman sneaking in some early down and goal line work. Well, Christian McCaffrey still does what he does as a pass catcher, but I don't know if Deonta Foreman is necessarily the handcuff. Do you agree or disagree with that, Troy?
So I would say that that's fair in terms of it. I think the problem with Chuba, and hopefully he just wasn't that good he had so much opportunity last year and he wasn't good with the opportunity, right? And I think that was the surprising part. Like, I feel like with the opportunities he had, he was very inefficient. He didn't score that much. He wasn't a great pass catcher. Like, again, he had a golden opportunity and then he pretty much fumbled the bag, right? So this year we'll see how they use him. But I feel like based off his performance last year, it leaves the door wide open for Deonta Foreman to come in and take that handcuff. I think it's wide open, but I don't think Chuba has it on lock.
Yeah, I just can't picture in my head like Christian McCaffrey getting injured and then them throwing Deonta Foreman out there and saying, hey, run a wheel route across the middle of the field. I mean, it's just like such different players. And I see Jeff kind of nodding here. What do you think? Is Chuba the handcuff? Is Deonta the handcuff? How are you looking at this one?
I'm exactly on the same wavelength as you, Dave, and that's probably no surprise if anybody knows us. But I'm just going to drop a little bit of dynasty advice on you right now that if you have Chuba Hubbard on your roster and God forbid Christian McCaffrey gets hurt, try to trade Chuba Hubbard off your roster and just don't even worry about if he takes that passing role or whatever it might be. I don't think Chuba is very good, to be blunt, but I think that there would still be some excitement given the youth, because we kind of know how Twitter or how Dynasty functions in that. And that is going to be your opportunity to get off. But kind of right now, Chuba Hubbard is sitting as a sunk cost to me in Dynasty. And I think that Foreman does have a chance to have some standalone role usage, especially if we see him get goal line work.
Yeah. And I mean, the Carolina Panthers moves last offseason should tell you everything you need to know about how they feel about Chuba Hubbard. They went out and signed Amir Abdullah after Chuba Hubbard had like 2 or 3 starts. Yeah. That's how bad Chuba Hubbard was.
Exactly. And he got all the targets. They get Chuba once they got Abdullah stole all the targets from Chuba because it was not good in that role. So that's why I'm like, it's open.
All right, we are running out of time, but let's try to just warp speed through a couple questions here so we can get to all of them. Are we overlooking Cordero Patterson once again and overvaluing Tyler Algier? Cordero Patterson has dual running back and wide receiver eligibility on Sleeper. I talked earlier that Cordero Patterson is right in that Damian Harris area, and after what he did last year, it does seem like we're overlooking him a little bit. Do you think he should be ranked higher or lower than where he is right now as a back-end RB3?
I think it's probably just super old. That's because this dynasty, right? He's old. So it's just like we're maybe undervalue him a bit. And I think maybe it might be good for one more season, but next year, no one's going to want to take CPAT. So yeah, so I feel for this year, he's undervalued.
And I see Jeff nodding. So let's just go ahead and move to the next one because we want to try to get through all of these. Jeff, you answer this one for us. Is anyone taking Julio Jones with the last selection of their draft?
Did he get tight end eligibility yet? Because that's really the only reason why I'd be interested in Julio Jones, to be honest.
Yeah, he was dust last year. He had that one really nice catch where the ball got tipped up in the air and he towed the sidelines. And I mean, I think that catch alone is the only reason that anybody's still looking at Julio Jones. Next question comes in from our friend Brad Bolt down in Australia. And he says, which running back on Miami has the best chance to be an RB1? Troy?
Chase Edmonds. Definitely Chase Edmonds. It's the money, but I just feel like I think he's better. I know people like to hate on Chase Edmonds, but I think I know Raheem Mostert, when he's healthy, he's very good. But listen, this man has been injured every single season. He's coming off a big injury. He's not going to get the work. He's going to have to be extremely efficient and score a touchdown from like the 50-yard line or something, which he could probably do. But I think Chase Edmonds is going to be RB1.
We'll make a bet on this, Troy. We'll talk after the show.
We will.
And it's a big if, but if Raheem Mostert can stay healthy for this season, I think he's the RB1 there. I mean, the guy's got elite top-end speed. He knows the offense inside and out. He has done nothing but be one of the most efficient running backs in the league when he was running with San Francisco. And I realize that Miami doesn't have the same O-line, but he is set up to smash there.
If this was 3 years ago or something, I would agree with you.
All right. Well, we'll talk about that one. But I did a video on the Miami backfield a while back. Troy disagrees with every single thing that I say in there. But what I see is Chase Edmonds, Myles Gaskin, Spider-Man point meme, they are pretty much the same exact person when it comes to every single measurable. I'm not buying into the Chase Edmonds hype. But, he's still, if Chase Edmonds does hit, he's getting drafted at a deep value right now. Last question here comes from Freddie. And let's just give a nod, a thumbs up, thumbs down, whatever you want to do. Is the Sky Moore hype real?
Sideways. I don't know.
Sorry, Freddie. I wish we could help you out more, but we got nothing, man. We got a split decision here. Absolutely no help for you whatsoever. I'm putting my chips on Juju for what
I think it's a little real. I think it's a little bit.
All right. All right. Real quick then, round table. I'm going Juju as the wide receiver 1. Jeff, who do you got as the wide receiver 1 in Kansas City?
Travis Kelce.
Taking the cop-out answer. And Troy, what about you?
Travis Kelce, Juju for now.
All right. Fair enough. Well, anyways, guys, ton of fun being on this show. Jeff, thank you so much for taking the last-minute invite and joining us this evening. I'm Dave Kluge. You can find me on Twitter at Dave Kluge. Jeff Bell here. You can find him on Twitter at For Whom J Bell Tolls. And then Troy King, of course, at T King Mode. We will be here every Wednesday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, just a couple of months out from kickoff. So subscribe at youtube.com/footballguys so you catch every episode of this, and we'll see you next week.